We saw last time that privacy has to do with limited access to oneself. One is enjoying privacy when one can control or has control over who has access to oneself. You are enjoying privacy when you can avoid being seen or heard, when you can keep people from touching you or even invading your private space or personal space. Privacy involves being able to make personal decisions, such as what to do with your body without interference. And finally, privacy involves controlling information about oneself. And here's where we see the close relationship between privacy and confidentiality. Consider this quotation in the Brand Ballard article in our textbook. While privacy involves others not entering a person's sphere of privacy without permission, confidentiality involves those who have legitimate access to private information not bringing it out of that sphere and sharing it without permission. You may have noticed the place of confidentiality in the various codes of ethics we've looked at. For example, the Hippocratic Oath, that ancient code of medical ethics says, "Whatsoever I shall see or hear in the course of my profession, as well as outside of my profession in my intercourse with men, if it be what should not be published abroad, I will never divulge, holding such things to be holy secrets." In a more contemporary language, the AMA Code of Ethics for Physicians says, "The information disclosed to a physician by a patient should be held in confidence." And the Nursing Code, "The nurse has a duty to maintain confidentiality of all patient information." Or consider the PT Code for physical therapists. "They shall protect confidential patient-client information and may disclose confidential information to appropriate authorities only when required by law." Physician's assistants shall uphold the doctrine of confidentiality regarding privileged patient information unless required to release such information by law or since such information becomes necessary to protect the welfare of the patient or the community. The music therapist protects the confidentiality of information obtained in the course of practice, supervision, teaching, and or research. So throughout the codes, we see this idea that a fundamental legitimate expectation that patients and clients have of healthcare professionals is the maintaining of confidentiality. Understanding the importance of confidentiality in the practice of delivering healthcare requires us, I think, to acknowledge the way in which the therapeutic relationship, the relationship between a sick or injured patient and a healthcare professional, it requires understanding how that relationship necessarily involves allowing healthcare professionals unusual access to patients. That is to say, the relationship itself brings an outsider, a stranger, a professional, into one's zone of privacy as one would traditionally define it. Healthcare professionals must have very close physical contact with patients. Healthcare professionals touch their patients. Obviously, healthcare professionals must see patients' bodies. We've all been in for a physical exam, and the nurse comes in and takes our blood pressure, and then she leaves and says, well, take off your clothes so the doctor can see you. Healthcare professionals must gather and record personal information about your identity, your health history, your family, and your relationships with your family. And then all of that occurs in a context where there is a relative imbalance of power and vulnerability. We as patients are vulnerable to healthcare professionals. In a way, they are not at all vulnerable to us. They have power in this relationship, and you as a healthcare professional will have power in your relationship with patients. They're sick, they're weak, they're vulnerable, they're needy, and they need you, and that gives you power. The point here is this. Because patients grant unusual access to themselves, allow, you might say, their privacy to be violated by the healthcare professional, it's incumbent upon the professional to keep all that they see and know and experience in that private sphere related to the patient, to keep that absolutely confidential. As we think about the moral foundation or basis for our commitment to respecting patient confidentiality, it's important to think about three principles in which those rules related to confidentiality are grounded. The first and most obvious one is autonomy. Given the close relationship between privacy and confidentiality, and between privacy and individuality and self-determination that we've spoken of, protecting confidentiality is a way of showing respect for patient autonomy. If that were not enough, it's clear that patients have a legitimate expectation that we respect the confidentiality of the information they disclose to us because it's in our codes of ethics, because it's in the law as a part of society's defining of precisely what we legitimately expect of healthcare professionals. But maybe most important of all is how essential protection of confidentiality is to the therapeutic relationship and to the benefit that we expect patients to derive from that relationship. The point is this: unless patients can be absolutely confident that the private matters they disclose to us will be kept confidential, we will not be able to develop with them the relationship of trust and mutual dependence that is necessary if this relationship is truly to be beneficial medically to them. Autonomy, fidelity, and beneficence. Erickson and Miller, in an article called Caring for Patients While Respecting Their Privacy, say it this way: the patient's well-being could be jeopardized and the fundamental trust between patient and nurse destroyed by unnecessary access to data or by the inappropriate disclosure of identifiable patient information. The rights, well-being, and safety of the individual patient should be the primary factors in arriving at any professional judgment concerning the disposition of confidential information received from or about the patient, whether oral or written or electronic. The standard of nursing practice and the nurse's responsibility to provide quality care require that relevant data be shared with those members of the healthcare team who have a need to know. Only information pertinent to a patient's treatment and welfare is disclosed, and only to those directly involved with the patient's care. On the next page, they write, establishing and maintaining patients' trust in their caregivers is critical to obtaining a complete history, an accurate health record, and carrying out an effective treatment plan. If a nurse fails to protect the patient's privacy, the erosion in the relationship can have dire consequences to the nurse-patient relationship. As we conclude this presentation, take a careful look at this advice from Erickson and Miller in reference to the obligation of healthcare professionals to maintain patient confidentiality.